Are you leading a team that is a lot older than you? Perhaps you are a newer, younger leader who has just started in their role, and a lot of your team are older and more experienced than you. I've been in this situation quite a few times in my 17 years of leadership, particularly when I was just starting out. One of my first roles was leading somebody who was almost 30 years older than me and had worked in the organisation their whole career. It took me a few false starts to get the hang of managing this challenge, and today I'll pass on some tips that have worked for me and stay until the end for the most surprising truth about managing staff that are older than you. The first thing I learned was how valuable it was to have a team that was older than me. If you can get over yourself and your fears of insecurity or your ego about how you are the boss now, the fastest way to build respect and trust is to acknowledge their expertise and recognise their experience. Be very careful about how you do this. No one wants to be reminded about how they are so much older than you. It's not necessarily flattering. I have found that by just taking the time to get to know each individual and being respectful of them by asking questions about what they do, what works well for them and what doesn't, it helps build that trust. Get the understanding and take the time to listen to them. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Nikki and I've been in leadership for over 17 years and have gone from leading just 2 people to leading leaders of large teams. And I was a pretty young leader, so hopefully some of these strategies can help you out. And if you do get something out of this video, I would love it if you would subscribe. The other tip is to seek out their input. Don't just do this as a strategy to get them on side. Actually consider how you can utilize their experience and knowledge and genuinely ask them for it. Involve them in decisions that you are considering for the team, particularly if you're thinking of changes, because 9 times out of 10, if somebody is a more mature member of the team or has been in the team for a really long time, they've seen it all before and can probably give you some great insight as to why it didn't work last time. Sounds negative, but it does help. Things tend to come round in cycles, so utilize this knowledge and seek their feedback before you make any major changes, as it could be a real advantage. Be open to learning from their insight and knowledge. It could be that they're newer to the team, but more mature, and it isn't organisational knowledge that they can provide, but more life experience. Perhaps they can provide some feedback on a potential decision and how it might impact members of the team. Obviously, you want to seek feedback from everyone in your team, but you will need to consider how you tailor your approach for every individual. If you are being observant in your leadership role, you will notice those who respond in different ways and what mechanism of communication works best for each individual. The other consideration is around career goals. I've always tried to consider every individual's career aspirations and how I might need to adapt their coaching to suit what it is they really want to do. I believe it helps to keep people engaged, so I'll support them to create their own career development plan, which I describe in the video linked on my screen if you want to watch that afterwards. But it is important to consider the different career stages of your team members and what is appropriate for each individual. For your more mature workforce, you will need to consider what their preferences are in terms of their own individual life stage and their goals. It could be that they just want to work the next few years until their retirement. They may have no interest at all in trying to talk about a career development plan or the next step. I would still recommend trying to create a plan with these individuals though, as there are always things that we can do as individuals to grow and develop. You don't really want somebody just sitting there waiting until retirement. Have a good conversation with them and really listen to how you can support them. I like to do this through getting a really good sense of where their strengths lie and what interests them about the job. Some of my more mature team members are great mentors, but don't default to this, as not everyone is interested in that. Show interest and keep building trust through honest communication and active listening. There is a video linked on your screen for this too. And make sure you consider the right support for your mature workforce. I have managed staff in their 70s, which is quite different to managing somebody who might be in their 50s and older than you, but don't necessarily require any physical considerations. This is the same for any team member, obviously. Everyone needs support in different ways. I have made different decisions to support different members of the workforce depending on their own situation. I had a team member that was in their late 70s and still really wanted to work and did a great job. And I did provide them with a different start and finish time to everyone else because they had to rely on a family member to drop them off at work and pick them up. And I needed to be flexible around what would work for them. Nothing is usually a big deal. It could be a different setup with computers and desks. It could be flexible working. It could be having a remote work option sometimes to adapt to where they're at. But you need to be in a position to be able to have these conversations with these individuals. So building the trust and rapport with your team is really important. Remember that your team, regardless of age, have lives and interests outside of work. And trying to bridge the gap through potential shared interests is another great way to build that relationship with your older workforce. Don't get into the nitty-gritty details of personal lives and blur your professional boundaries. You aren't friends. But I have found a surprising connection with my more mature members of the team around humour. I know not everybody has the same sense of humour, but it has almost always been my connection point with my more mature team members. Often it would start with just outright acknowledging the age difference. Usually some little joke about it can help take the edge off and release any kind of awkwardness around the fact that they are older than you and probably have far more life experience and wisdom than you do. And being able to acknowledge this with them helps just kind of bridge that gap a little bit faster. That's what I've found in my experience anyway. Remember though, those boundaries in leadership are very important, particularly when you're trying to build relationships with your team. Watch the video linked on your screen next to help you out with this, and thanks very much for watching.